Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. Scott Ritter will be with us in just a moment on which is the American enemy, Russia or the European Union. But first, this. History tells us every market eventually falls. Currencies collapse. And look at where we are now. 38 trillion in national debt. Stocks at record highs defying gravity. So what happens next? Groceries, gas, housing, everything's going up. And this dollar, it buys less every day. When the system breaks, your stocks won't save you and your dollars won't either. But one thing will: gold. I've said it on my show for years. Gold survives collapse. Central bankers know this and billionaires know it. That's why they're buying more. Is it too late to buy or is it just the right time? Call my friends at Lear Capital to find out. Ask questions, get the free information. There's no pressure, and that's why I buy my gold and silver from Lear. And right now, you can get up to $20,000 in bonus metals with a qualified purchase. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com today. Scott Ritter, welcome here, my dear friend. Thank you for accommodating my schedule. Before we get to the issue that I want to explore with you, which is the rampant European Russia-phobia and the United States national security strategy released by the Trump administration just a few days ago, the IDF just posted videos of its assassination of Hamas figures in Gaza. I thought Trump had negotiated an enforceable ceasefire in Gaza.
Trump had negotiated a giant one-way street for Israel to do whatever the heck Israel wants to do. This is no secret. Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledged this. All of the senior Israeli political figures have acknowledged this, that basically this ceasefire exists in name only, that at any time if Israel feels a threat has manifested itself, Israel has the unilateral right to take action without seeking permission of anybody, and the United States will not hold them to account. So this is the reality of the Gaza ceasefire. It's not a ceasefire in the traditional sense of the word. It's basically a vehicle of surrender for Hamas and the people of Gaza, so long as they allow this one-sided activity to take place.
Trump was asked in the White House yesterday why American troops are in Syria. And he gave an unremarkable answer, but then he ranted about, well, I'll let you hear him. Peace in the Middle East. Chris, cut number 12.
On Syria, Mr. President, on the U.S. troops killed in Syria over the weekend, why do we have troops in Syria?
Because we're trying to make sure that there's going to be and remain peace in the Middle East, and Syria is a big part of it. The new leader is a strong person, and that's what you need. This is a rough part of the world, and it's been amazing what's taken place in Syria. We got rid of Assad. We got rid of other people that were really bad people and that were in the way of peace in the Middle East. You know, we have legitimate peace in the Middle East, first time in 3,000 years, and we have 59 countries backing it. And we'll see what happens with Hamas. We'll see what happens with Hezbollah. But regardless, I mean, we have countries that want to go in and clean that out if we want them to do it.
I mean, do we have peace in the Middle East for the first time in 3,000 years? This is absurd.
No, I mean, Israel is bombing, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza. How's that peace? You have continued, chaos and tragic anarchy in Syria, where the ISIS head choppers that we now have embraced as the legitimate government of Syria continue to slaughter Alawites and Christians. We just talked about ongoing murder of Gazans by Israel. This isn't peace. it's basically what Trump has done is, through the facade of peace, has created a vehicle that enables Israel to murder at will. It's murder incorporated, if you want to call it anything, but it's not peace.
Benjamin Netanyahu claims that the anti-Semitism of the Australian government, was the cause of the attack on a beach that killed 15 people over the weekend. Ambassador Chaz Freeman just told us that Netanyahu himself is the greatest cause of anti-Semitism on the planet. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Netanyahu and the government he leads has led to more anti-Semitism around the world than any other cause in modern history. It's a global reaction to the murderous excessiveness of the Israeli government. The notion of a greater Israel at expense of everybody else. Listen, I'm not anti-Semitic, but I will tell you right now, if somebody came up to me and said Israel first, America second, they get punched in the face. And I'm one of the few people that's actually, put my life on the line for the state of Israel. During the Gulf War, hunting down Scud missiles as a weapons inspector, working with the Israeli government to ensure that the Iraqi threat never again manifested itself. I've put skin in the game. And so it's not that I'm anti-Israeli. It's not that I'm anti-Jewish. I'm just anti-Netanyahu. I'm anti this Israeli government. I'm anti-Greater Israel. I'm anti-Zionism. And so I can sit back and say that the conditions that lead to people viewing Israel as the ugly threat that it is are conditions that are singularly manifested by Benjamin Netanyahu and his government.
Switching over to Ukraine, Europe, and Zelensky. Zelensky and his EU colleagues are meeting this week, and he has implored them to steal the Russian government deposits in European banks. Chris, cut number 15.
And it will only work if there is true accountability, if the punishment of the aggressor becomes inevitable. Yes, it's not easy, but it's not as difficult as some may try to portray it. Right now, European leaders have the decision on the table regarding frozen Russian assets. Most of these assets allocated in Europe, and these Russian assets can and must be fully used to defend against Russia's own aggression. The aggressor must pay.
Where will this lead if Belgium caves and those 300 billion in assets are stolen by the Europeans?
It should lead to financial ruin for Europe because it basically undermines the legality and legitimacy of Euroclear and the entire concept of centralized banking, where you have safe depositories repositories for the central reserves of various nations that help facilitate trade. This will be the end of Europe, the end of the European Union, the end of the euro. And it's just stupidity in the extreme. It just shows the absolute desperation that is rampant in Europe today, where they have pinned every aspect of their future viability on a positive outcome in Ukraine that will never happen. And because they are panicked right now, they will resort to almost anything to include outright theft on the largest possible scale. Let's put this in context. When President Roosevelt extended Lend-Lease to the Soviet Union in 1941, he extended a $1 billion loan. Europe's getting ready to steal $250 billion. Nations have gone to war for far less. Iraq invaded Kuwait because Kuwait was stealing several $1 billion worth of oil through slant drilling. So if you want to look for a casus belli, Europe's getting ready to make one. And Germany needs to be careful too, because even though in 1996 the United Nations voted to make moot Article 53 and Article 107 of the United Nations Charter, which designate Germany and Japan as enemy states, and authorizing any nation to launch immediate military action against them without going through the Security Council if these states, carry out aggressive policy. The United Nations said, "Oh, Germany's a good country nowadays. We don't need to worry about it." Well, they didn't change the charter, and therefore the law did not change. The law is on the books, and it can be reinterpreted based upon, current events. China has done so with Japan, putting Japan on notice that Article 53 applies, and China may very well take Japan off the face of the earth if they continue to voice aggressive and act aggressively against China. And I think Russia's getting fed up with Germany as well. I mean, how many times do you have to hear the Germans say, we want to rebuild the German army so we can carry out aggressive intent against Russia before you actually take action to eliminate this threat to not just Russia, but all of humanity? Europe has gone down a path that they can't come back from. This delegitimizes the entire enterprise, and don't expect the United States to sit on the sidelines and say, good job, Europe. We will come down hard on them as well.
Well, are the Poles becoming more militaristic? The Polish government?
Poles have always been militaristic. I mean, when you have a foreign minister, Sikorski, who is literally, one of the more irresponsibly aggressive national leaders out there. This is a man who tweeted, "Thanks, America," showing the bubbling gas coming up from the destruction of Nord Stream 2. So, this is how this man thinks. He's not a diplomat. He's a man who, if he was arrested in the aftermath of World War II, would have been found guilty of, facilitating wars of aggression. He's a war criminal. This is his mindset. And unfortunately, it's the mindset of many of Poland's politicians. The Polish people, I think they're far more nuanced. In fact, there's a large percentage of the Polish people who do not want war with Russia or looking for normalized relationships with Russia. But you have a Polish leadership that has been empowered by decades of America telling them that you're new Europe. You are the new face of Europe. Remember Donald Rumsfeld in the lead up to the Iraq War, when France, Germany, and old Europe said, we don't want to play. Poland played. Poland sent troops in to invade Iraq. That's the Poland that exists today, a Poland that has latched itself to, an aggressive anti-Russian posture. And now Poland's confused because the only nation that makes this Polish posture viable, the United States, is now saying, we don't want to play that game. And Poland's looking over at Europe saying, are you guys capable of standing up? And the answer is no. I mean, Poland and Germany are not friendly right now. The Germans are talking about relooking at, Poland's western frontiers, and Poland's talking about, solidifying their hold over Germany's eastern frontier. So, they're talking about reparations and undoing that which was done at the end of the Second World War. I think Poland's got a lot going on right now, and what you're looking at, what looks like tough talk out of Polish leaders, is really an expression of panic because they are losing control of the narrative.
Here's Zelensky. I hesitate to call him President Zelensky because we all know that he is illegitimate and is governing under martial law. But here is Zelensky and Chancellor Merz yesterday. Listen to the language, the last 3 or 4 words that come out of the Chancellor's mouth. Chris, cut number 2.
It would have been clear how NATO membership could have worked for Ukraine anyway, but from the U.S. side, we have now heard that there will be security guarantees from the U.S. that are similar to NATO's collective defense pledge, Article 5. The question of territory is an extremely painful issue for us. I mean, Russia has its own list of wishes. The first time since the 24th of February 2022, we see a real opportunity to pave the way towards peace. So it's just down to Russia whether or not we manage to achieve a ceasefire by Christmas or not.
So he has not been listening to President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov at all, because he used the word ceasefire. Either that was inadvertent, which is unforgivable in the head of state in this context, or ignorant, equally as inconceivable in the head of state in this context. The Russians will not accept a ceasefire under any circumstances. How many times have we heard that?
Look, what we're seeing from the Germans isn't ignorance or, sloppy. It is a deliberate policy of undermining any potential of a negotiated peace. Germany doesn't want to negotiate a peace. What Germany wants to do, together with Zelensky and the rest of Europe, is drag this process out into the summer. See, in the summer, we've got that silly season of midterm elections where everything becomes hyper politicized. And the goal of Germany and NATO and Ukraine is to keep the United States from finalizing this conflict until which time they can conspire against Trump using domestic American politics to empower an opposition to take control of the Congress in the November elections, and therefore paralyze the Trump administration, preventing them from implementing all of the policies that are contained within the national security strategy and which are being manifested today. This is what Germany's doing, and Trump needs to know this. He knows what they did the first term because they did the exact same thing. Trump came running in talking about NATO, or transforming NATO, et cetera, and they ran the clock out. And then the midterm elections, Trump lost control of the Congress. Impeachment, paralysis, nothing. This is the game. This is the playbook that the Germans and the Europeans and the Ukrainians are using right now. And Trump needs to recognize this. I don't know why the people near him don't say, hey, take them out at the knees, because these are literally the enemies of American democracy. You don't have to like American policy. Many people don't. But if you don't respect the right of the American people to elect the leaders they want based upon, their priorities, then you are an enemy of America. And, Russia has never put its thumb on the scale. Never. We now know that that's the case. All
Right.
this 2016 stuff is just garbage. But you know who has put their thumb on the scale? The Europeans, the Germans, the British, the Italians, the French. They have all reached across the poles and used their influence within their respective constituencies to argue against Trump, to plot against Trump. Again, I have no problem with an American citizen saying, I don't support Donald Trump, and therefore I'm going to support anybody but Trump in the upcoming midterm election. That's your right. That's your prerogative. That's your duty as an American if that's what you believe. But I do object to foreigners coming in and manipulating the American political process. And that's what's happening right now. Trump needs to take these people out at the knees right now, not just to defend his policy, but to defend America.
Has the United States renounced hegemony, or is it just switched targets?
No, it's we've refined the definition of hegemony. We are seeking total hegemony over the Western Hemisphere. This is the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. We want to dominate the Western Hemisphere as part of securing Fortress America. But to do that, we're willing to take a step back from Europe and the Middle East, recognizing the complexities and realities of a multipolar world. And we're also, even when we focus on the Pacific, we recognize the power and influence of China. So we want to, operate as, quasi equals. We still want, military overmatch, conventional overmatch, which we're not going to get. So I'm not too worried about the rhetoric there, but we are stepping down the talk about nuclear confrontation. The Biden administration, just to remind your audience, the Biden administration changed the nuclear employment guidance of the United States to direct the Pentagon to redo our war plans so we can carry out a preemptive nuclear strike against China, and to ensure that if we did go to war against Russia, a nuclear war, that to emerge victorious, we have to, of course, have a nuclear arsenal that is supreme to all other nuclear arsenals in the war, even in a post-war environment. That means that we would have to take out China as well. The Chinese know this. They know that, the United States is preparing actively for nuclear war. Last year, when the Trump administration said, or the Biden administration said, they're ready to have a nuclear war with Russia, the fine print was, and we're going to take out China's nukes as well. This is the reality of where we're at right now. So the Trump administration isn't playing that game right now. We're not playing, nuclear flex with the Chinese. We're talking about seeking normalized economic relations, avoiding a trade war, and yet respecting, trying to limit China's military expansion, to the first island chain.
But Trump has said we can no longer shoulder the burdens of empire. We still have 750 military bases in 80 countries around the world and are building 2 more, one in Syria, one in Gaza, and we're trying to overthrow or even kill the head of state in Venezuela. So it's a different, as you say, it's a refinement. It's a different breed of hegemony.
Yeah, 750 is a big number, but remember, these are bases that could house, anywhere from a few dozen American troops to, several thousand American troops. For instance, we're talking about withdrawing from Europe. We have loads of military bases in Europe, but as we begin to withdraw, we'll be left with cadre staffs, which isn't really military power projection.
What is that? What does that mean, Scott?
Well, for instance, if I have a base where I want to operate, helicopters or aircraft, or, I want to forward deploy forces, right now I need to have, full-time maintenance crews. I need to have pre-positioned equipment and people maintaining that. I need to have command and control capabilities. But if I'm going to shut that down without closing the base, I just leave behind some caretakers, some guys with keys on their keychain that run around and shake the locks and check the gates and, turn on and off the lights, make sure there's enough oil in the generator, things like that. But that's not a real military capability. That's just caretaker status. And we're in the process of, I believe, turning Europe into just caretaker status. And we're also in the process of trying to do the same thing in the Middle East.
Yesterday, 2 peculiar public statements were made in Great Britain, one in the form of a speech, one in the form of a statement issued. The one in the speech was the Ukrainian-born female head of MI6. The public statement was the head of their military, the rough equivalent of their chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The terminology is obviously different. Why are these British leaders, rarely known for public speeches, trying to instill fear in the hearts of people in the UK over Russia?
Well, it's a very good question and very astute observation that this is not normal in a democracy. The military does not make policy. Neither do intelligence services. This is a critical, point that needs to be made. Policy is made by elected representatives, civilians. And the fact that you don't have civilians making policy statements should send a signal to everybody that this is not normal. This is not the way things are supposed to happen. On the military, sometimes the military will make a statement if asked to do so by government. So I'm going to let this man who has never served in combat, by the way, has no operational experience, but he's talking the language of war. Look at his chest. He's got Jubilee medals. He doesn't have deployment medals. The man doesn't know what war is, yet he's speaking the language of war. I'm always a little leery when that happens. But let's focus on Blaise, the head of MI6. She's not Ukrainian born. She was actually born in Hong Kong, I believe. But her grandfather is a notorious Ukrainian Nazi who fought with the Nazis, disappeared sometime around 1944. In 1943, he sent his family off, who went to the United Kingdom, and that included Blaise's father. And then her father later got a job employment in Hong Kong, and she was born in Hong Kong. So, they claim she has no direct contact with her grandfather. She doesn't know anything about him, anything about his past. I would say that once a Ukrainian, always a Ukrainian, and that you are tied to the Ukrainian diaspora for life. But be that as may, why is an intelligence officer? And remember, they used to call the head of MI6 C. You didn't know who this person's name was, right, because it was secret. It's the Secret Intelligence Service. One of the things that the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, does is information warfare. They have a huge department. Judge, I've worked with them. I mean, I did an operation with them. I know these guys intimately. I've been in their offices, in their shiny little headquarters in Vauxhall. These guys aren't secret to me. I know who they are. I know what they do. I know how they do it. And therefore, when I see the head of MI6 up there making a statement that touches on every aspect of information warfare. I say you're waging an information warfare operation right now. You are engaged in hybrid warfare. You are engaged in what the Russians would call mental warfare. You're sowing the seeds of doubt externally and internally to shape perceptions. This isn't a policy statement that Blasian. She's waging information warfare against the British people, against Europe, and against the American people by being seen as making a policy statement, but she doesn't make policy. She doesn't make policy. What she does is execute intelligence operations. And that's what she's doing through her speech. And everybody needs to see through this right now. This is a frontal assault on democracy. Anytime you have an intelligence professional in a democracy making policy statements, you have a failure of democracy.
Very, very dangerous and unsettling, and at least not articulated the way you did so beautifully here in the West. I was very upset at what President Trump said about Rob Reiner. I mean, what happened to him and his family was among the more horrific things you can imagine. Here's what he wrote. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, here we go, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration expressed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us. It's tough for me to read this with a straight face, Scott. I'm doing my best. Perhaps like never before, may Rob and Michelle rest in peace. I thought this was a heartless and despicable way to remember a beloved American figure who's entitled to his own political views, no matter what they may be.
I mean, for a moment, I thought you were reading something that was drafted for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who oftentimes has statements of this nature written about him, playing golf for the first time and getting 18 holes and ones in a row because he is divinely appointed. Donald Trump's rhetoric, this is embarrassing as an American. We don't speak of our presidents in this way, and we shouldn't tolerate presidents who speak of themselves in this way. But be that as may, it is what it is. Look, Rob Reiner, I've never met the guy. He did call me once in 1999. And I love Rob Reiner as an actor and as a director. I mean, All in the Family. I grew up with All in the Family, and right. It was just it defined a generation. The way they broke through various taboos and addressed it in a approachable, comedic fashion. Racism in America was touched upon like it couldn't have been touched upon at any other time and in this manner. You couldn't have All in the Family play today on American TV. The Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies of all time. I can watch that nonstop. The quotes from that are just, they define life. The same thing with, A Few Good Men. We can go on with the movie When Harry Met Sally. The man is a genius in the art. His politics are his politics. He and I diverged on this. We supported each other in the buildup for the first Iraq war. We were both against this war. But, in 2017, I have no problem with people being against Donald Trump. Sometimes I'm like, sign me up as well. But the Russia hoax aspect of it, he dove straight into, Russia being an enemy of America, the Russophobic trope, and, saying that Trump was working with Russia irresponsibly and colluding with the heads of intelligence services in the United States against the sitting president. This is a bridge too far for me to support. And so we disagreed violently on this, but I still respect him as an artist. He made an offer in 1999 to option a book I had written, Endgame, and turn it into a movie. I was new in the whole book writing and thing, and I wanted to say yes. I had a lawyer who said, no, it's a low ball, make him go higher. And so we rejected it, and we never got another offer. I would have loved to see what Rob Reiner would have done with Endgame, no matter what I feel about him politically. But the fact of the matter is, he was brutally murdered. It's a tragedy, a human tragedy. He's murdered by his son, apparently. This is something that should cause people to go into mourning, not to use this tragedy as a moment to, continue the deification, self-deification of the new Trump, cult of personality, which apparently has gripped much of America today. I agree with you. I was sickened when I saw Donald Trump write that. Again, Rob Reiner and I did not agree politically, but he was a wonderful American. He's welcome to his own political beliefs. And what he did in the performing arts as an actor and as director define American film, American television, and will continue to define for decades to come. He set a very high standard.
Tomorrow at 11 in the morning, at this hour, as you and I are doing this interview, I'll be interviewing my former Fox colleague and still my friend, Tucker Carlson. Senator Chuck Schumer, leader of the Democrats in the Senate, has offered a resolution for the sense of the Senate condemning Tucker for having Nick Fuentes on his show and not challenging all of Fuentes' beliefs. I don't know this fellow Fuentes, but I was very impressed by what he had to say about Trump's Truth Social post. So as a bit of a prelude to Tucker coming on tomorrow, and to elicit your response, of course, Scott, here's Nick Fuentes yesterday responding to Trump's Truth Social post on Rob Reiner.
Someone gets murdered by their son. It's a horrific tragedy. This is a horrible story. And nobody deserves that. I don't care what their politics are, what they said on the internet or on television. Nobody deserves to be murdered, stabbed to death with their wife by their own son, who they tried to help. Now, if Trump were actually doing what he promised to do, you could overlook the fact that he's vain, that he's a narcissist, that he's tactical but not strategic. You could overlook all these things if he was bringing home the goods. That we haven't ended one of the wars. We haven't remade the federal bureaucracy, and then he's a dick on top of it. Then it's all about his vanity and his own self-aggrandizement on top of it. What is the redeeming quality now? It's nothing. It's hollow. That's my take on the Rob Reiner stabbing. No one should be making fun of that. It's not funny. Who could honest to God look at that and laugh? This guy had a daughter who now has to live with this. Her brother is in prison for murdering her parents, who are now dead. Her life is shattered and destroyed, and so many people's lives are destroyed. You go on True Social and make a joke about Trump derangement syndrome. It just goes to show there was never anything there. There was never a center. It was always empty.
What do you think?
Look, I only know Nick Fuentes peripherally. I don't follow. I didn't follow Charlie Kirk, and I don't follow Nick Fuentes. I try to avoid the domestic political side of social media. My forte is foreign policy and military affairs and international relations and arms control. But what he says resonates. I mean, look, President Trump has many strengths. He wouldn't be president of the United States if this wasn't manifestly so. But he has many weaknesses as well. And these weaknesses are magnified by many of his supporters who refuse to hold him to account. I mean, one of the things that make people self-regulate is the notion that if you are excessive in your behavior, your social circle will hold you to account and you'll be shamed. This man knows no shame. And where he should be shamed, where people should say, no, Mr. President, you shouldn't be doing that. Nobody says that. This is a president that has his entire cabinet surround him and lay hands on him as if he is a conduit to the Lord Almighty through prayer session. This is a man who is the center of a cult of personality of his own manufacture. And I think at some point in time, I think he's starting to believe that he is that which he seeks to manifest artificially. So thank you, Nick Fuentes, for saying what you said. And hopefully it resonates. And look, Tucker Carlson and I have had our differences in the past, but I respect Tucker's integrity. And I especially on issues such as this, he's a very moral person. And I really look forward to what he has to say about this issue and about Donald Trump in general.
Thank you, Scott. Pleasure, my dear friend. A short week next week because of Christmas, but I hope we can get one more. I know you'll be doing some traveling. I hope we can get one more segment in with you before Christmas itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great analysis. Terrific, fearless analysis. Coming up later today at 1 this afternoon, Aaron Mate. At 2 this afternoon, Matt Ho. At 3 this afternoon, Karen Kwiatkowski. And of course, at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, Tucker Carlson. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.